Brushless motors are used everywhere these days. I tried to use them on my RC speed car, the Beast, targeting 200 miles an hour and experienced some challenges. How they work has been a mystery to me, and what went wrong made me realise that I had to understand them better and find the answers to these niggling questions. I couldn't find the answers in a way I understood, but after loads of research and practical work, I think I've cracked it. This video series tackles this topic in a different way from what I've seen done before that helped me understand it, and I hope it will also help you. But is it going to help me develop a powertrain for my Beast RC car that won't set the motors or speed controls on fire? Come along for the ride and we'll find out. This is part one of my video series. In this video I'm going to answer my question: what is KV rating? Where does it come from and what does it tell you? And why does a motor with more turns have a lower KV value? To start with, let's have a quick look at the anatomy of a brushless motor. I'm just going to cover the basics here because I'm mainly concentrating on the performance properties of the motors in this series. I don't think we need to go any deeper than this. Here I've got a selection of motors. I've got two in-runners on this side and then some outrunner motors, from this quite large one here to this tiny one on the far side there. The thing they all have in common is they've all got permanent magnets and coils, and I can show you them if I take apart this outrunner motor. I've already taken the screw out of the back of it that holds the rotor in place. So if I just pull that apart, you can see on the inside of the bell housing, or the rotor, there's these permanent magnets around the inside of it. And on the stator, you can see here there's coils of wire around each part of the stator. In this case there's actually 12 coils as we go around there. So the difference between an outrunner and an in-runner motor is that on an outrunner the permanent magnets are on the outside and the coils are on the inside. On the in-runner it's the other way round, so the rotor has the permanent magnets on it and that rotates within the coils which are on the inside of the can of the motor. Another thing all these motors have in common is that they all have three pieces of insulated wire like this wrapped around the parts of the stator to form coils. Each one of the three wires is called a phase, and the number of turns around each part of the stator is what gives the motor its quoted number of turns. In this case it would be a 7-turn motor. So each phase on this motor, it goes around 4 of these parts of the stator. Of course, if there's 3 of these wires wrapped around it, that means there's 6 ends that we somehow need to connect onto our 3 outlet wires. The way that's done, if we look at this slightly damaged, burnt out stator, it's done in pairs. So 2 connections go onto 1 wire and the same for the other 2. And that's got to be done in a certain way to make sure the motor works correctly. When electrical current is applied across pairs of these 3 wires in a controlled sequence, the phases on the stator are energised in sequence. That builds magnetic fields which attract and repel the permanent magnets in the rotor, and that allows the motor to produce a turning force or torque that we can use to drive our RC vehicle. The way to understand the characteristics of a motor actually starts by using it as a generator. And I did this test at work, so what you see here is an accurate reenaction of that. This that you see here isn't actually an Amazon box. It's an expensive piece of equipment called an oscilloscope. That measures voltage against time of the signal that you're putting into it. The signal we're going to put into it is going to come from the motor itself, and we're going to measure it by connecting 2 of the 3 outlet wires to the connections of the oscilloscope, and then we're going to turn the motor. And we're going to do that with this drill, which is straightforward. You just connect the shaft of the motor to the drill and then turn it. quite high speed is good because high speed's good because it gives a more accurate result. And what we actually see in the results is caused by the interaction between the permanent magnets of the motor and the coils, and it produces this cyclical voltage here. It's reversing as well. It goes below zero and then above zero by the same amount, and that's called the back electromotive force of the motor, and it's proportional to motor speed. So if we were to turn it twice as fast, we'd see these peaks going twice as high up the voltage scale. And the way I like to think of this back EMF of the motor is as the braking voltage, because it acts to slow it down. If you're turning it, it's what you measure that is trying to slow the motor down. It's what gives some resistance. Here are the results of the test at two different speeds. So when we turned the motor at 900 RPM, we got 1.5 volts generated, and at about 1500 RPM we generated about 2.4 volts at the peaks of the oscillating curves. So if we put to one side the fact that the voltage trace is that oscillating squiggle, we can put these results on a graph to understand them better. So here's my two results there plotted on a graph, and then we're going to draw a straight line through those. And this is again showing that the braking voltage, or the back EMF, is proportional to the motor RPM. It's shown by the fact that there's this linear straight line relationship between voltage and RPM. So now if we overlay the battery voltage over that back EMF voltage curve, we can see that that is the maximum voltage that we can apply to the motor if we want to actually drive it and create a torque. We need to do that. We need to apply a higher voltage than the braking voltage to drive the motor, because we want to put a current through the coils to generate a magnetic field that causes that torque, as I explained earlier. Earlier in the RPM range, so down this sort of area, the back EMF voltage is quite low, so you can get quite a high achievable voltage difference to the battery voltage, so you've got no problem generating a current through the coils and driving the motor. But as you can probably guess, as the motor RPM increases, that achievable voltage difference decreases. So your ability to drive current through the motor, that's also decreasing. And that carries on up to a point where the battery voltage and the back EMF are equal, and the motor stops turning faster. And then this is the no load RPM of the motor. So this is a constant speed where it stops accelerating. And that's what you'll see if you just connect the battery straight up to the motor. And this is where things really started to click for me, because it explains the relationship between the back EMF of the motor, its fundamental property, and the no load RPM that you get from that motor. And just to explore that a little bit more, I want to discuss what would happen if you had another motor which had more coils on it, or stronger magnets, which gives it a higher back EMF for the same RPM. So you can see that it reaches, you know, that the green curve for motor, what I've called motor 2, that sits higher up than the red curve of motor 1. And what that means is that it reaches the battery voltage at a lower RPM than the curve of motor 1. So that means its no load RPM is lower than that of motor 1. So back EMF in volts per RPM, it's a fundamental property of the motor. A motor with a high back EMF is one that has more coils on it, so more turns, or stronger permanent magnets, which makes sense because those features would make it a better generator. You might be wondering why I haven't actually mentioned kV value yet, and that's because motor kV is actually directly related to its back EMF, which is why it's also a fundamental property of the motor. You get the kV value by inverting the back EMF, so 1 divided by back EMF equals the kV. And for the motor I tested, the kV came out at 600, which is quite different from the 660 quoted, but it's not, you know, there's going to be some tolerance and variation from the quoted value on any motor. Adding motor 2 into our results table that I used for the example earlier, as I said before, that is going to generate at a similar speed to the motor 1 a higher voltage generated, so its back EMF is going to be higher than motor 1, which, as I've just explained, is going to give a lower kV value of 400. So a high back EMF in volts per RPM gives a low kV value in RPM per volt. And that explains why a motor with more turns, which would have a higher braking voltage or back EMF, would have a lower kV value and not a higher one like you might think. I hope you found that useful. I'll be back soon with part 2, where I'm going to answer the question, what torque and power can a brushless motor provide? And I'm going to use a special test rig that I've made, which is quite interesting to see it in action. So please like and subscribe so you don't miss it.